My name is Trevor Douglas, and I'm a student of the Science Center from semester 9. And this video is going to share some of Science Center students' ideas and views on the science school and try to relate how important the science school is to us.
I thought it'd be a good way to actually find out what I wanted to do, because I was really confused when I was in grade 13 as to what I wanted to do for a career. And I thought the Science Center would be a good way to find out a bit more about science and explore just the broad area of science and find the direction I wanted to go into.
We saw an article in the newspaper talking about this different type of science school type thing that occurred right in the Science Center. What an opportunity. Just went for it. Thought it is a way to enrich our experiences. We'd been in the science club together and enjoyed what we had there, so we saw this as being a good opportunity to explore our interest in science a lot more.
My friends from high school were sort of limited in their view, their scope of the world, as I was at that time. And once I got to the science school, I was surrounded by all these really motivated people who had all kinds of different ideas about doing things, working on projects, really enthused about science, whereas my girlfriends from Notre Dame, like going out on Friday night was what we talked about. So it was really different for me.
It's hard to put any type of a stereotype on our semester because we had so many different people. They came from basically from Sarnia to Kingston, I guess, and everywhere in between. And what we found, probably the one characteristics that stood out among them, was the fact that we like to work with young people. We had a good time working with the younger age groups, both with the hosting and when we did stories and that type of thing. We found that we really enjoyed working with kids, and I think that was really the only thing that tied us together. We were so different in our outlooks on lives and the way that we approached the Science Center and the workload that it gave us.
There are a lot of exhibits from all sorts of different areas and fields of technology and engineering and science that I hadn't really been interested in before. And biology never really appealed to me before, but at the Science Center I did spend time fooling around in the Science Center and getting to know different exhibits, getting to talk to some people like Earl in electron microscopy and getting experience in these different areas that before I wouldn't have had that possibility, and I think it would have made me a very sheltered engineer.
Being in that environment, it makes you believe that you are capable of doing things yourself. If I hadn't been in that kind of environment, I might not be doing that myself, because in a high school environment you don't really see that kind of enthusiasm, and when you're in the environment it helps you a lot because the enthusiasm sort of rubs off on yourself.
The best experience I got out of it was learning about science with people that found it interesting. In regular high school you didn't get that. You got people that were always putting you down because you were interested in science. It was something that you read from the textbook, memorized, and then just wrote on your exam, and never really bothered about what it really meant or what these diagrams show, how they really work. The Science Center, we literally took the diagrams out of the book and put them into real life, and with our hands worked with these things, such as lasers. We got to do holography, which you only read about in a textbook in high school, and you go, well, I wonder how that works, interrelate. And when you're at the Science Center actually making holograms, you're dipping the paper in the developer and you're seeing these lines come out in the paper or on the film that will be your hologram. And the thrill when you turn on the lights and you see this three-dimensional object right there that you've made. How can you not want to learn how that happens when you've done it yourself?
I found the teachers actually one of the best things at the Science Center. I found that I could approach them as friends more than as teachers, and even when they weren't in a teaching situation, it was more a question of talking to an equal and discussing a problem rather than going to them seeking advice from a master of sorts. In a classroom, they were open and frank, and what really got me is that we never really had a lecture per se. It was always a discussion where we wouldn't bother sticking up our hands. We just toss out our questions, and the conversations would range hopefully along the topics they wanted to talk about rather than anything that the course outlined.
They were really relaxed. You could talk to them, you call them by your first name. You could go to them if you had a problem with the course, and they would actually give you help rather than just kind of try to get rid of you.
It was more personal, and they really encouraged you to think creatively. Like, take Roberta, she used to hand us projects and just say, go, like, make physics as art, do something. And it wasn't, well, this is step A and you do it, step B and you do it. It was just make physics as art. And that had me in the dev lab with paint spattered all over myself, trying to use centripetal force to make art, and it actually worked. So
the quality of the teaching was excellent, and you may get that in a normal high school, but you don't. It's not reinforced by the use of all these demonstrations, which are available at the Science Center.
The ability to use equipment freely. We could walk into the electron microscope lab. In fact, Earl encouraged us to after we learnt about it. He said, oh yeah, just go use it. And we were on our own to use this fantastic piece of machinery that, you know, you need teacher supervision for in regular high school if you were even allowed to use it, and if they had one. And lasers as well. We could go in and use holography lab. You don't get that in regular high school.
The other thing that really got me was the fact that our apparatus was much larger than anything else. One thing that sticks out in my mind was that in algebra we made a huge tensegrity structure, which is a collection of sticks and string. Most of them are in the order of a hand-sized objects. Ours was 1 meter tall, and we danced with it in the Great Hall, and I don't think we'd find the ability to do that anywhere else.
I use the electron microscope and the laser, and just generally, most of the exhibits they have at the Science Center, and I think they were useful because you get to see immediately what happens. You do labs in high school or whatever just to see physics, the phenomena of physics or whatever. But at the Science Center you get, I would say, you get a better demonstration of what's going on than these little labs that you set up in high school. And it's also more fun. You don't, when I was learning from the exhibits at the Science Center, it was completely my choice. I would go down and I would, look at some of the exhibits, and it would be out of my interest, and I wouldn't even realize that I was maybe learning something from it because it's more fun. But in high school, you really don't care about the labs that you learn because they're tedious and they're not interesting. But at the Science Center, that's definitely not the case. But I think definitely you still learn the same information from it.
At the Science Center school, people are there for 5 months, and it's a time where experiences build on previous experiences. Whereas when a child goes into the Science Center for 1 day, it's fun and it's a great thing, and they can talk about it the next day at school, but it goes very fast. It fades fast from the memory. And even 1 week, the students that went in for electron microscopy or spectroscopy, they couldn't gain and retain as much as we learned. Not as much as we learned, but the change in ideas. It's not enough time to actually change someone. You can spark a small interest, but not a large interest that's really going to change them for their lives.
I don't think there's any way in a shorter term, or in a much shorter term than the 5-month semester stay, that you could build up the kind of rapport that the semesters seem to among themselves and with the staff. Basically, by the end of the first week, we only knew about half of each other's names. It was in fact probably into the 3rd week that we really got going, when we began to know not only each other, not only our classmates, but also most of the staff on a first-name basis. And I think that was part of the glamour of the science, and the fact that you could walk in and know people, the fact that you could approach professionals on an equal level, which I don't think, there's no level of comradeship that you can get from someone in just a week.
I think the grade 4s, they get a bit out of it, but it would not last. Some of them would just think, oh, it's a joke, I'm going to science for a week, alright, a week off school, yay. And then they'd go back and be the same, they wouldn't care about science anymore. But after the Science Center for 5 months, you really think science it's important. You should get other people to know about it, and you yourself have a lasting knowledge and just this outgoing ability just to be able to go up and talk to people. You have the look, as they called it in our semester.
the 5 months gave me not only an appreciation for science, but I think that it helped me personally as far as communication, communicating ideas, experiences, because of the science school's influence. Their influence on communication. We did a lot of projects that way. I think it broadened my scope a lot. It was a really good experience all in all.
If the science school was made into a week-long program, let's say for grade 8s or something, where they come in as a camp sort of idea, and you just progress each week a new set of students, I don't think they would get the same sort of feeling for what it is going on. You'd get a gee whiz, like, it looked like a magic show of anything. Like, oh, isn't that impressive how that thing goes boom like that? Or look at that three-dimensional hologram, gee, I wonder how that's done. You just wouldn't have the time to get as in-depth and as involved. You know, it would become almost a lecture like a regular high school. It's just an extension of the regular high school in the sense of, here, we'll lecture you, this is how a hologram works, blah, 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 read it on this handout. And here, make one, but you don't have much time, you know, because we've got to get the other student to have a chance.
I have been to the Science Center, not for a week, but I had been when I was young, more than once, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, and I don't remember any of it. When I first went to the Science Center in grade 13, I looked around as if it was new, basically. I remembered a few things like the electric hair or whatever, but I didn't really get a good impact off the science, like a huge impact off the Science Center after being there for a day, and I don't think I would have for a week either. I think grade 13 is an excellent time to have something in the Science Center because it's a crucial time. It's when everybody makes decisions, and it's great for helping you make a decision into what field you want to go to. And I think that's very important when you're in grade 13 because, as far as I can see, nobody I know knows what they want to go to in grade 13. And also, when you're in grade 4, you don't really have an appreciation for what kind of toys, so to speak, you have to play with at the Science Center. You don't have, you don't even have the academic background to appreciate how brilliant an electron microscope is, or how brilliant it was for the people to develop it. Like how brilliant those people must have been for them to develop it. But when you're in grade 13, you do have that. You have some kind of background, and you can appreciate how excellent it is, and that you can possibly contribute to research or scientific knowledge, even though it might be minor. I mean, you know that it's possible.
The whole idea of closing the science school depresses me. I look at people in high school right now that were like me, closed off and shunned by their people around them, that won't have the opportunity to share and find these other people that do exist, that so enjoy science. And you need that sort of peer pressure, good peer pressure, to guide you in your decision making.
There's a lot of people that could go into science, and they're not going to have a major push behind them to say, these are the great things that you can do with science, and you can have a large say in the scientific world. And students coming up from high school, they have a 30-minute lecture once a day, and it goes in 1 year and gets written down on an exam paper, and then it's gone. And they're not going to have an opportunity to really experience science fully. And I think, therefore, a lot of people won't go into science in university.
It really scares me in that I think that they're losing, or I think that Ontario itself would be losing a great way of educating people to become communicators of science. There are a great many excellent institutions in Ontario for churning out researchers, for churning out technicians and engineers. Unfortunately, there's very few people who can bridge the gap between those people and laymen. I think that the Science Center filled that gap really well. Not only in the hosting process that they carried through, but also with the science students that came out with not only the ability to communicate science, but with a spark that made them want to.
I was shocked when I first heard about it. I couldn't believe it, and I really don't see any reason why it should be shut down. I think that personally I'm willing to do anything that I can to see it stay open.
I think it's a terrible thing because I learned a great deal from the Science Center, and I think even if these people have ambitions before they go into the Science Center, I don't think they're as reinforced unless you're in the environment of other people who are as enthusiastic as you are, and also in the environment where you can learn as much as you can or take advantage of the opportunity to see what's there, because you don't get that kind of opportunity in high school. You don't get to see high technology. There's just not enough money to supply high schools with electron microscopes.
I think it's going to be a great loss that students younger than I won't be able to go to the Science Center. There's a great opportunity there to meet people that have some similar goals and a lot of lack of understanding and a lack of ideas for the future and what science has. And we all, in my semester, we learned together. And we shared a lot together. And I think it's a real shame that future generations might not have that opportunity.
The Science Center left me with something that you can't really put a figure on or a number on, and what it was is that I can now communicate science. I can make it exciting not only for myself but for others. And when I go to university and see people yelling about the fact that they have to do quantum physics and the fact that they're doing constants physics and this type of thing, I get interested in it. And I know that I have friends now, a great deal of my semester went to Master University, and they're having a great time with it simply because they enjoy the courses they're taking. And I don't think they would have got that any other way.
I don't think I really knew what science was about before I went to the school. And through things like physics projects, I kind of learned how science is a process of not being presented with a problem and its solutions, but even trying to figure out what the problem is and being creative about finding a solution for that problem.
I think the very idea of the way the Science Center works cannot allow the Science Center school to be elitist, because in fact the theory behind the Science Center, which they teach to the Science Center students, teaches you should not be elitist. You should get to have other people know about science. You should not be a snob about science. You should make it interesting for other people, so that in itself cannot be elitist.
The first day of the science school, I remember all sorts of different people coming in from all over Ontario, and everyone, I think, was unsure as I was why we were there and what we were going to be doing and exactly what the program had in store. And we found out quite fast.
I remember some of the people there, one in particular, Marcus, he built a plasma ball. And to see people do this sort of thing, and first off, what is a plasma ball, and then to see someone build one, phenomenal. How can you not be excited about science when you see this happening around you? People your own age, interested in science, building something that is so phenomenal that you don't think you could do it, yet you see someone else doing it, your own age, you should be able to do it, and gives you encouragement to go out and try something on your own.
I wouldn't have been as aggressive in terms of where I wanted to go, I don't think, if I hadn't gone to the Science Center, because, as I was saying earlier, the environment you're in, it rubs off on you. I wouldn't have, shot for as high a goal if I hadn't gone to the Science Center.
I think the Science Center, more than being a place or a school or anything of that sort, is a collection of people. And those people I don't think you'll find anywhere else. And the people at the Science Center provides more than anything else a meeting spot for these people. And to lose that would be to lose a great deal.